Hi there and welcome along to another episode of The Serve of Leadership. My name is Ian Crawford. I'm a professional speaker, trainer and coach specialising in leadership and influence. And on the other screen, once again, is my friend and colleague, leadership coach and consultant extraordinaire, Ash Dashludi. Welcome back, Ash. Session 3. Who would have thought that we'd get this far?
Crofts, mate, welcome back to you. How's your week been?
It has been interesting. Here in Western Australia, we're slowly coming out of the whole COVID thing. So that's starting to ask different questions of leadership and teams. So it's been a interesting week. How about yourself?
Mate, when you say slowly, everything is relative, mate. Position yourself anywhere else in the world, and they reckon we are coming out at lightning speed.
Yeah,
absolute lightning speed.
Did you just talk about time as a construct, you hippie?
Oh, mate, wait till we start talking about the astrophysics in episode 100. Then we're really going to come to some interesting stuff.
Astroplaning. All right, mate, enough of the chit-chat. What are we talking about today?
Mate, so today our conversation is going to be around a topic which I think pops up a lot in these days, is this idea of having courageous conversations. Or sometimes as a leader sort of raised with me the other day, said, how do I have this hard conversation that I have to have? So we thought a good opportunity for you and us to be able to sort of spitball around that and hopefully throw some tips out for people out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is one of those areas that leaders really feel let's say uncomfortable with and not confident with. Now, I've got to have a bit of a truth bomb in before we start.
Okay.
I must admit, hand on heart, that the tips that I come up with come from me screwing up big time in this area. And I've I'd like to say metaphorically learnt by getting blood noses, but sometimes it hasn't been a metaphor. I've screwed up these type of conversations a lot. So my tips today are going to come from, hard learnings. Let's go with that.
And there's no better way. There's no better way. In fact, if you can tell me where there is such a thing as easy learnings, then mate, put it into a pill. You will make a bucket load of money out of that.
I hear astro traveling is an easy way to learn.
I'd just like to put a trademark on that from the outset if I could.
You should. All right. Start us off. You start off today. What's your first tip?
I think first tip for me is an idea I call being on the same page. And so what I mean by that is a lot of people picture things like having difficult conversations, important conversations, courageous conversations, whatever you want to call it. They think about what I call in the moment. How am I going to be able to handle this situation? How am I going to be able to sit down and have this chat? Whereas I find the leaders that I come across who do this really well, they actually do a lot of work prior to the time that they've got to have that conversation. So what I mean by that is an example, we've sort of spoken over the last few weeks, so that really important piece around setting expectations for leaders and teams and the teams that they work with. I mean, and more importantly, making sure that they clarify those and that they're on the same page. So it's not just, hey, Crofts, mate, this is, the way that we're going to do this. Are you all on board? Yep, cool. Oh, great. We're all on the same page. No, it's actually clarifying and finding, well, hang on, this is the picture in my head. What's the picture inside Crofts' head? And do those two things align up? Right?
Yeah.
So I think that idea around, and some language that I use, funnily enough, my wife and I actually use this in our conversations with each other when we've got to have some, let's call it courageous conversations, certainly on my side.
The ones you lose all the time?
Well, I don't like to think of it as a net sum game in that piece. But we sort of use the expression of, well, look, the story in my head is this, right? So we're talking about the behaviours that we see, the observations and our perceptions of things, which then allows the other person to show the story in their head as well. So it allows us to have that clarifying conversation to make sure that we're actually seeing things the same way. So, for me, it's that setting expectations up front, right? Making sure that we're on the same page by having those clarifying conversations. And then I guess the third element to that is making sure that you've been developing trust and connection and communication along the way. So for leaders in particular, when you get to the stage of having a courageous or a hard conversation, you've done a lot of the groundwork already to build that trust, to build that opportunity for us to be able to feel like we're on the same page, even if it's a bit hard and uncomfortable.
Yeah, look, you've stolen my first one. I was going to say exactly the same thing. And I think one of the really, like you said, one of the most powerful strategies that a leader can do in regards to having this courageous conversation is have the conversation around expectations really early, either in the formation of their teams or when the new kid on the block arrives. And, you know, setting those expectations have to be around performance, output, as well as expected behaviours.
Absolutely.
And I like to think that they would do it on a consultative basis as well. So get the team together and go, hey, if we're going to be the best team we possibly can, how are we going to act? What are the behaviours we're going to hold each other? Now, ultimately, the leader gets to say yay or nay in the end. But what I found when I ask those questions with groups that I've worked with, people come up with realistic behaviours because people know how to act in the workplace. Whether they choose to do that all the time is another thing, but people fully understand. And the reason I think it's so important to set those expectations is because once we've set those expectations from a behavior point of view, but from a performance point of view, it's the leader's responsibility, plus the teams, but ultimately the leaders, is to hold people accountable for that. If we don't set those expectations, what do you hold people accountable for? They're just guessing. Now, if I walked up to you and I was the leader, I was having the conversation, and I've set those expectations, we've had those conversations in the team, and we're both on the same page, as you said, the conversation is going to sound very, very different. So if we've had the conversation, it might sound, hey, Ash, I just wanted to have a conversation with you. You remember 2 weeks ago, the team decided that we would ensure that we would respect other people's working space and not approach them while they're on the phone. Now, I've noticed 4 times over the last week that you've done that, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very concise conversation. Now, if you and I and the team hadn't made the decision or set those boundaries, here's what the conversation sounds like. Hey, Ash, I just want to have a conversation with you about approaching people while they're on the phone. I think it's distracting for those people. And the response from the team member could be something as well, it's fine, this is how we've always done it. Now, when they respond like that, suddenly the conversation has become way more challenging because now it's based on perception of who is right and who is wrong. And you're never going to win that conversation. It's going to be really hard to get the common ground and someone loses. And that's never good for trust and the relationship that you have with that team. So, as someone who naturally is not good at having difficult conversations, by my wiring, having that foundation of, hey, here is the expectations of the business. Let's stay within those. And if we don't, I'm going to hold you accountable as the leader, and you should hold each other accountable as well. So that's my point of view anyway.
Mate, so tell me, who do you reckon is good at this? You said, you're not naturally good at that. I'm not sure I've come across many people who would put themselves down as naturally good at this.
Yeah, I don't think I think I'm good at it, just simply because of the years of doing it badly and learning from it. You're good. But even today, where I have to walk into a senior leadership group or whatever it is, I'm still going to have a tinge of nervousness. I'm still going to, if I let my natural wiring flow, I'll avoid it. There's the honesty, but I know that that's not going to be good. So I just hold on to it and just go and do it because I have the skills and I have the process in order now after doing this for many, many years. What about you?
But I think also, if I just pull you up for a second there, when you talk about that nervousness when you go in there, right?
Yeah.
To me, that is just a reflection of, that's your body recognizing that it's an important moment. Right?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And so the very good leaders, what they do is they take that moment, they recognize that it's an important moment and there's a nervousness, but they step up to that nervous, or they lean into that nervousness and have a crack at it, right?
Yeah.
So it's that understanding that, yeah, look, it's important to me and I'm shitting my pants a little bit, but I'm doing that because it's important. Okay, how do I now lean on my tools to be able to make the best of this situation going in?
Yeah, and that's a fair pull up. And I also know that you're now going to charge me for that coaching session. So,
Oh, mate, please, yeah. And so, okay, well, look, that was my third point, and I think you sort of aligned with me on that. What else do you reckon is underlying in making these courageous conversations go well?
Well, I think it really flows on from what you just said as well. Is that if you choose to be a leader, if you sign up to be a leader, then courageous conversations are simply part of the territory. Now, I know many leaders that don't want to do it and are poor at it, and they'll start using excuses like outright ignoring the need to have the conversation, to finding excuses around, she'll be right, I'm too busy, I'll get around to it sometime, and that time never arrives. Like you said, I'm never going to say that even the most skilled leaders don't enjoy courageous conversations or difficult conversations. I think they have neutral ground. Now, if you enjoy them, go get help. I think I think that's at the other end of the continuum. I'm not sure we should walk around going, "Hey, another courageous conversation or difficult conversation." I'm not sure that's the mindset. Leaders just know, hey, it's part of the deal. This is what I signed up for, and I need to do it. Basically what you were saying. But time and time again, I'm going to emphasize it even more.
Yeah,
are not doing it for whatever reason, and it just gets worse.
Well, and they're courageous because they're important, right? Yeah. I think that's why they have to be had, is because they're important conversations.
Oh, look, I had a senior leader come to me the other day, a really kind leader who looks after their people really well. And they said to me, what happens if people get upset? And my response is, I don't care. Now, if you say it professionally and respectfully, and someone gets upset, then that's their responsibility, not yours. And my question, once again, is you need to ask yourself, what is best for the business? Is it to have this conversation or worry about whether people are going to get upset? And if I go up and be rude to you and call you all the names and all that stuff, I deserve everything I get. But if this is professional, someone gets upset.
Well, let's just get into the weeds of that just for 1 second.
I don't care.
Get into the weeds just for 1 second. What I took away from what you were saying there is, yes, be candid and respectful in your approach.
Yeah.
But also, the leaders who have these conversations understands there's two pieces to it, right? So there's the outcome that I'm trying to get to, also try to manage the relationship side of things. So I think when you talk about an individual being very kind, he's nervous about, or she is being nervous about the response that they're going to have to contend with. And as long as we manage the relationship side and deal with the response that people have, you can also get to really good outcomes as well, and being strategically focused or driven, because it needs to be balanced between the two. I think that's what I took away from what you were saying.
Well, you can, but again, using it as an excuse, I don't care. I don't care if you think that people are going to get upset. That is
sure.
Just
right.
a terrible
if that reasoning is going to push you away from the conversation, then absolutely, I agree with that. Okay.
So,
good.
What's your next tip, mate?
So my next tip, I talk about, the first one was about the idea of being prepared beforehand and doing the prep work. The second one for me is about leaders becoming very good in the moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I talk about being in the moment, it's practicing the things that can help you to remain grounded and balanced and clear-headed when you are leading into these situations, right? So that could be as simple as, number one, managing your energy and things during the day, right? So you know that not often are hard conversations instantaneous in the moment. They do happen sometimes, but not all the time. So, knowing that you're going to be leading into these, not being absolute flat stick all the time, making sure you clear some space to have a bit of thinking and preparation leading into it, making sure that you have really thought about the other person's perspective before going in. Things like that can be really useful.
Yeah.
Even to the point of managing your own physical reactions. So knowing that you can be nervous and stressed and being able to engage even simple techniques like, controlled or managed breathing and things like that to be able to regulate your nervous system and be able to sort of calm things down in the moment. Now, we know that if you actually spend time practicing that beforehand, then when you get into the moment and you're trying to calm yourself, then you will actually have a better response. Having said that, even if you don't practice it, you'll still get a pretty good response by just, say, taking in some of those breathing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the third tip I'd add in that section would be, well, always look to frame it in an optimistic manner. So it's why we talk about the idea of, say, a courageous conversation rather than a hard conversation, or, that there is an aspect of reminding yourself around you're having this conversation because it's important for the team, it's important for this individual, it's, that there is a real positive takeaway to come out of it, or a constructive, it's not always positive, but a constructive takeaway. So that framing that you place in your mind can be hugely powerful for how those conversations go as well. So that was my second one. What is that? How does that sit with you?
It sits very well with me. I think we should also note that, and this comes up when we do training together, when we talk about courageous conversations, people automatically go to, it's going to be negative. Someone's done bad. No, not at all. Courageous conversations is about walking up to people and saying, hey, you've done a great job as well. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds in regards to people getting nervous about them, I think two things. There is people who don't, again, are wired not to feel comfortable with giving that positive stuff, sucking up and all those other things, that the Australian colloquialisms that we use over here. And secondly, what we tend to find is that the positive stuff that we give with people usually is quite flippant. Hey, great job, Ash. Well done on that report. Rather than and having that structure around going, hey, mate, I really appreciate what you do. I'm not sure you realise getting that report in on time allowed me to read it, prepare, and give a much better presentation to the CEO. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more impactful. Now, I must admit, there's part of me that doesn't like this session so far, because we've now agreed wholeheartedly on two of the tips.
Well, I wouldn't say agreed. Agreed. It's not often that I agree with you, Cross.
That makes me feel very uncomfortable. So, look, leading on for what you were saying in regards to the breathing exercise and then stress management. I guess that's a smaller version of stress management, which you have a great background in as well. Is one of the things I find when people have those courageous conversations, or leaders have courageous conversations, and it goes off the rail and turns into a train crash, is when the leader loses their temper and reacts to the situation. And so I say, when we're having these courageous conversations, whether again it's a positive, hey, you're doing great, or vice versa, hey, you're sacked. That's probably the most extreme version, and you're no longer needed, of a courageous conversation. I call it being a Zen master. And one of my favorite sayings, and the only saying that I have pinned up on my wall here in my office, is the person in the room with the greatest behavioural flexibility will control the room. So
explain that to me.
Yeah, so basically what it means is the person who remains calmest in the room when everyone else is falling apart is always going to be in the best position to resolve the situation. Because if I'm calm, I have a choice of every emotion and every strategy I want to go to. If I get angry and run out to anger, before I could choose another strategy, I've got to come back to calm. And that returning to calm already has impacted on the conversation and the relationship you have with people. So the calmest person in the room will always control the room, is my theory. So as a leader, they must remain calm while having these conversations. And in my experience, 99.9% of these conversations, when people get upset with it, they're not upset at you personally. They're upset about the conversation you're having, or the information that you're talking about. They're embarrassed, they're confused, whatever it is. And you have to understand that, because if we're talking and I get angry, what's happened inside my brain is whatever you said has triggered something in my head that I've taken personally. If you're talking about reports and you're talking about deadlines, well, it doesn't make me a good or a bad person. It just means I haven't managed my time well. So leaders can't, they're not allowed to. That's a really high level skill they have to get used to, that they can, remain calm in regards to the conversations and not take it personally whatsoever.
Well, and I think it's important to point out that calm is not robotic, right? So
Lord, no.
It's not to mean that leaders themselves can't be emotional. They can't be. I think it's important that they need to recognise what they're experiencing as well. And if they choose that the time is right to be authentic and to share some of that experience with, during the conversation. But I think you can experience emotion and be calm in the same entity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is that, you don't watch the reactions. And that's what I'm saying is you've got to stay calm in regards to the reactions, not necessarily how you're feeling right now type stuff.
Yeah.
If you feel nervous, hey, that's not such a bad thing sometimes because it actually makes you perform better. But, you can't get into that position where you react to the person. Yeah. So you got anything else?
You know me, I like to work in threes. It's very zen leading on from your idea, and it's very feng shui. Probably the final one for me is this idea around, in those conversations, understanding that context is king. And I guess where that has come from is a number of observations that I've seen when being out with leaders in field, in that real situation, and they go and they try and sort of have that conversation, and there's a nervousness for them around that, and they jump straight in. Bang, 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 here's the things, and it's a bit like a machine gun. Poof, 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 poof. They all head out without actually stopping to say, well, hang on, what's the actual situation that we're talking about, right? What is the actual scenario, the situation? What's the background, right? And then actually sort of zeroing in around either whether it's the specific behavior or action or things like that.
Yeah.
So that idea of making sure that things fall into a bigger picture, that's, that there is an understanding behind it. And more importantly, putting yourself into their shoes to say, well, look, yes, okay, you've got to be very focused around this strategic decision or this piece of feedback or whatever it is, but also it fits into a bigger picture or context for them as well. So it actually helps to drive a bit of an empathetic response from the leader as well. So for me, context is king, and too often we don't take the time to provide that background and context, which ironically I think would make people's understanding easier and their responses a little less severe in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that one. So I'm not going to go any further.
Now I just feel like you haven't done any homework, that you just turned up and just followed up, ridden my coattails.
Zen master, come on, Cross. Well, I don't want to bore people and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to come to an end. So Ash and I will be back next week discussing another topic around leadership. If you have missed out on previous week's sessions, then click on the link below and check out our playlist on YouTube. If you have a topic or a question that you would like to ask us to address, then our contact details on the screen right now. Please reach out. Thank you, Ash.
Mate, thank you. Good to chat as always.
We'll see you next week. And thank you for all of you for joining us today.